So, the other night I couldn't sleep, and the Lord was like, I have this message and I need you to talk about it. And oh, by the way, you're gonna call it the mess of ministry. So I was like, oh, okay. So I tried to record it yesterday, didn't work. It wouldn't upload. So I guess we're gonna try this again. So before we kind of dig in, I kind of want to give you a little bit of background on like my story if you haven't heard it, because I think it's going to help you guys understand the story of Lazarus and the way Jesus walked with him and his sisters. So when I was 18, my dad was an alcoholic most of my life. So when I was 18, he got really sick. He got cirrhosis of the liver and ended up passing away. And then about a year and a half later, I found out that my mom had lung cancer, and she ended up passing away about a year and a half after my dad. So I'm the oldest of my two siblings. So ultimately, I'm of age. So I thought, I have this responsibility now. I have to be strong for my brothers. I put a lot of pressure on myself that I didn't need to, but at the same time, it was like survival for me, and I needed to make sure that my brothers were taken care of. So everybody on the outside looked at me as somebody who was strong. I had my life together. I was in college. I was doing all the right things. I had a job, whatever. But really on the inside, I wasn't grieving. I was holding in all of my emotions. I never even talked about it with anybody about what I was feeling. I had a very, very small support system, and it really was my grandma, which you heard her testimony last night. She was really the only one that checked on me, but even then, she only had a small picture of what I was going through during that time because I didn't talk about it because, I had to be the one that had my life together. So now I'm 11 years in and I'm exploring all these emotions. I'm going through a counseling program, so I'm basically counseling myself through all of that and healing, and it's brought out a lot of emotions. And so I kind of want to talk about, there's a lot of different things in this, but I want to talk about like emotions, stages of grief, and really the mess of ministry, because I think so often we look at our pastors and our leaders in our church and we think that they have their life together, which is not even true. It's heart work that you don't see behind the scenes, and the pain that they have to go through and the burdens that they have to carry to bring you the gospel message. And I think the story of Lazarus, Mary, and Martha depicts that so perfectly. So if you want to follow along, this is in John 11, and I'm going to start in verse 1. So it says, a man named Lazarus was sick. He lived in Bethany with his sisters, Mary and Martha. This is the Mary who later poured the expensive perfume on the Lord's feet and wiped them with her hair. So this is important because here we see the intimacy between Mary and Jesus, because she let her hair down, and that was something that you only did with your husband behind closed doors. So it's important to see how Jesus walks with his people and how Jesus can walk with you too. If you just build that relationship with him and let him in, then you can have that. So it's important to keep that in mind and how intimate he was with this group of friends, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. And it even says that he loved them. So verse 3. So the two sisters sent a message to Jesus telling him, Lord, your dear friend is very sick. So they sent a message to Jesus. Jesus wasn't even with them at this time. He was off preaching the gospel somewhere else. So they're like, we know Jesus, he can heal, but what they didn't do is give the details of what they wanted him to actually do. And I think so often when we pray, we don't give Jesus the details. So like in my story, I didn't really give details of what I wanted. I just pushed off my emotions. I didn't ask for healing. So now I'm actually doing that. And so I think that's important when we get into prayer, is that we really have this relationship with Jesus, where we can just share all the details of our lives and what we want from him and what we want him to do. So verse 4 said, Jesus says, he heard about it and then said, Lazarus' sickness will not end in death. No, it happened for the glory of God, so that the Son of God will receive glory from this. So although Jesus loved Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, he stayed where he was for the next 2 days. Finally, he said to his disciples, let's go back to Judah. So ultimately what's happening in this scene, I'm not going to read through all of that. I'm just going to kind of paraphrase it for you guys. The disciples were objecting and saying, Lord, you were about to get stoned just a few days ago. Like, we can't go do that. His disciples were acting completely out of fear. And Jesus was like, I have to go. He's like, I have to go. There's people there that are walking in the dark. And I'm going to read this paragraph to you so you can actually see it, because it is so profound. Jesus replies, there are 12 hours of daylight every day. During the day, people can walk safely. They can see because they have the light of this world. But at night, there is danger of stumbling because they have no light. Then he said, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but now I will go wake him up. So what Jesus is saying is that there's people in Judah that are walking in the dark. They aren't walking in the light. And if you, John chapter 1 talks about Jesus being the light. So these people haven't met Jesus yet. And Jesus knows, I have to go so they can see me, so they can know me. So Jesus knew that he couldn't operate in fear, because if he did, then people would not know who he is and they would stay in the dark. So I want you to remember this, because it's going to be important for later. So then the disciples said, Lord, if he is sleeping, he will soon get better. They thought Jesus meant Lazarus was simply sleeping, but Jesus meant that Lazarus had died. So of course, logic tells us, if you sleep, your body's going to get better, right? So they're like, yeah, Jesus, we don't actually have to go. We don't need to go get stoned. And then something happens, and we see Thomas say to his fellow disciples, let's go to and die with Jesus. So now, all of a sudden, something in their hearts had changed. Like, they were 1 minute living in fear to the next saying, okay, let's go. I'm ready to die with him. So I don't know what happened in that. I don't know what Jesus said, but they were ready to die with him. And I think we need to be that way too when we are going to deliver the gospel to people who are lost. So verse 17, when Jesus arrived at Bethany, he was told that Lazarus had already been in the grave for 4 days. So this is important because culturally they believed that the spirit of someone who died would linger around for 3 days. So Jesus waited until the 4th day, which means he wasn't just dead, he was dead. Like, there was no chance of him coming back. So what happens next makes it even more miraculous. So Bethany was only a few miles down the road from Jerusalem, and many of the people had come to console Martha and Mary in their loss. Remember, Martha and Mary is Lazarus' sisters. When Martha got word that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary stayed in the house. So in my story, I was very much Mary. I turned my back on my faith. I didn't want anything to do with it. And I think that's where what Mary was feeling right now. But Martha ran to Jesus. So we have a choice in our trials if we are going to stay in the house, isolate ourselves, and run away, or we can run towards Jesus and allow him to speak into our lives and heal us. So Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that God will give you whatever you ask. So Martha was in complete surrender of Jesus and what he was going to do, because she recognized that he was Lord and that he knew what was best for not only her, but Lazarus. And so Jesus told her, your brother will rise again. And yes, Martha said, he will rise when everyone else rises at the last day. Jesus told her, I am the resurrection and the life. So no matter where you're at, if you're, whatever trials you're going through, whatever circumstances you're in, remember that Jesus is the resurrection and the life, and he is going to heal you too. You just have to give it time. It's not going to happen overnight. The trauma, the trials didn't happen overnight, so you're not going to completely be healed overnight. That's why it's important to keep working this program and coming back and seeking support from those around you that love you. Okay. So anyone who believes in me will live even after dying. Everyone who lives in me and believes in me will never ever die. Do you believe this, Martha? And she replied, Yes, Lord, she told him. I have always believed you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one who has come into the world from God. And then she returned to Mary. She called Mary aside from the mourners and told her, the teacher is here and wants to see you. So Mary immediately went to him. So Mary went from, I'm going to stay in the house, to the teacher is here. Now the next line is so fascinating to me because it's so me. And I'm sure maybe some of you too. So it says, Jesus stayed outside the village at the place where Martha met him. When the people who were at the house consoling Mary saw her leave so hastily, they assumed she was going to Lazarus' grave to weep. So she left. She was angry at this point. And I think that so many times we just, when we grieve or whatever we're going through, we think that anger is so bad. But really, if we just take it to Jesus, he can handle it. He wants to hear those raw, real emotions from you. And I think it gives us, like I said before, a way to give Jesus more details of what we're going through so that we can let him into our heart on a deeper level. So when Mary arrived and saw Jesus, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died. How many times have you said, if only this, if only I would have made a better choice, if only I would have went this direction, if only I would have didn't show up to that party or whatever it is. How many times have we said that? Or how many times have we said, if only Jesus could hear me? There was a point in my life when after my parents passed away, I said, Lord, if only you heard me, my parents would still be here. But I made a mistake and I didn't understand the way that God worked. I didn't understand his ways, and I'm not supposed to. And that's okay. So verse 33, when Jesus saw her weeping and saw the other people wailing with her, a deep anger welled up within him, and he was so deeply troubled. Where have you put him? He asked them. And I love this human side of Jesus, and I don't think we talk about it enough, is we're seeing him angry. He's angry because he wants to grieve with his friend. We're starting to see stages of grief here, and usually this is how it starts. We get angry, and sometimes we lash out, whatever it is. And we often think our anger is bad. Our anger isn't bad. We just need to explore why we're angry and dig deep. Like, why am I angry right now? What is causing me to be so distraught? And I think if we explore that with curiosity, we can start to find deep healing in that. So what happens next is another raw emotion of Jesus. And it says, they told him, Lord, come and see. And this is the shortest line in the Bible, and I absolutely love it. And I think this emotion that we see in Jesus, oftentimes we are so ashamed to show it. And it says, then Jesus wept. He wept for his friend. And especially in society, it tells men that they shouldn't cry. But Jesus has defined manhood here. And he was raw and he was vulnerable, and we can see his hurt for his friend that has passed away. Even though he knows what's about to happen next, he is still weeping. He weeps for you when you're hurting. He wants you to come to him. He wants to share in those emotions with you, if you let him. Then people who were standing nearby said, "See how much he loved him." But some said, "This man healed a blind man. Couldn't he have kept Lazarus from dying?" Oh my goodness. This was me when I was praying about my parents. Like, he's God. He can heal them. And then when he didn't, I was like, wow, like, you don't even hear me. And so I was like, I'm done. But the reality is, as I started coming back to my faith, I started to see where potentially my parents could have been a stumbling block for me. Like I said before, my dad was an alcoholic. Would I have been in the same boat as my dad, drinking right next to him? I don't know. But I do know that God knew what was best for my life, and he's led me to where I am today and has made me a better person because of it. And I think it's only because I went through that pain and embraced it that I was able to start finding healing now. So then it says, Jesus was still angry as he arrived at the tomb. A cave with a stone rolled across its entrance. "Roll the stone aside," Jesus told them. But Martha, the dead man's sister, protested, "Lord, he has been dead for 4 days. The smell will be terrible." So whatever mess you're in, however much you think it stinks and is just incurable, roll the stone away and let Jesus work. You don't need to have that stone there. So Jesus responded, "Didn't I tell you you would see God's glory if you believe?" So they rolled the stone aside. So if you roll your stone aside, you're going to get to see the glory of God deep within yourself. And you will receive that healing if you trust him. So then Jesus looked up to heaven and said, "Father, thank you for hearing me." Here we are like, nothing's happening yet. We just rolled the stone aside. And here's Jesus thanking God for what? I'm sure these people are thinking, how can he thank God in a time like this where his friend is dead and there's people crying everywhere? But this is exactly what we are called to do in our tragedy and in our hurt, is we are called to praise God through it. And that's what Jesus is doing. So then he said, "You always hear me, but I say it out loud for the sake of all of these people standing here, so that they will believe you sent me." Then Jesus shouted, "Lazarus, come out." And this is a reference to Isaiah 8:19, and I want to read that to you. And it says, Someone may say to you, let's ask the mediums and those who consult the spirits of the dead. With their whisperings and mutterings, they will tell us what to do. But shouldn't people ask God for guidance? Should the living seek guidance from the dead? Look to God's instructions and teachings. People who contradict his word are completely in the dark. They will go from one place to another, weary and hungry, and because they are hungry, they will rage and curse their king and their God. They will look up to heaven and look down at the earth, but wherever they look, there will be trouble, anguish, and dark despair. They will be thrown out of the darkness. So what they think is about to happen here is that they think Jesus is talking to the dead, but he's not. And I think oftentimes, especially now, we see people seeking out mediums, seeking out tarot cards, looking into horoscopes, and Jesus says, no, look to me. Look to me for guidance and wisdom. I will give it to you. And so I don't know what it is in your life that you're looking to instead of God. It could be addiction. It could be lust, gambling. It could just be you wallowing in your hurt. I don't know what it is, but take some time today to figure that out. And like Jesus said, Lazarus, come out. What is he saying to you? What is he asking you to come out of and lay down and surrender to him? And then the dead man came out, his hands and feet bound in grave's cloths, his face wrapped in a headcloth. And Jesus told them, unwrap him and let him go. This is where we start to see healing happen for Lazarus. Jesus told them to unwrap him and let him go. And they unwrapped him from death. And Jesus can unwrap you from your death too. There are things that will spiritually hurt you. We are called to protect our eye gates and our ear gates. Whatever goes in is going to come right back out. So that could be the music that you listen to, the movies that you watch, the books that you're reading. Evaluate those and say, are these positive things that are going to promote my healing and promote my relationship with Jesus? If the answer is no, get rid of them. Stop looking into them. And we're not here to condemn and judge you. So many of us have done the same thing. So many of us are working to give up those things as well. So you're not alone, and don't ever think that you're alone either. But what I love about this is we see so many emotions throughout this story. We see the love that Jesus has for these three people. We see his disciples operating out of fear. We see Mary angry at Jesus. We see Jesus angry. We see people just crying over Lazarus. And then we also see praise and thanksgiving. So this is the picture of how messy ministry can be. There's so many emotions and hurt that we have to work through. But in the end, it can be so beautiful. We can be unwrapped and let go. And we can live in that freedom that Jesus is calling us to. And I think that each one of us has a ministry, whether that's to your family, whether that's showing generosity to somebody, whatever it is, you name it, we all have some sort of ministry. So my question to you is, what is Jesus calling you out of? What is he asking you to do today to improve your ministry? Whatever that is. And I think so many times as we're going through healing, I know I had several conversations last night with a few different people that are going through deep hurts. And I just asked a simple question, and I tend to do this a lot. And usually it's, have you worked through that? Have you worked through that? And a lot of times the answer is no. And what that is you living in a prison. You need to work through that, whether that's from your childhood, whether that's something you're walking through right now. Take time to dig deep into it. I like to say that we need to explore our hurt like a house. So we need to step up onto that front porch of that house with curiosity and start exploring each room. And maybe that means we have to go down into the basement, a place that has been so closed off and dark for such a long period of time, and just allow the light of Jesus to come in and just minister to our hearts, feel the emotions, feel the pain that it's caused us. And I just want to encourage you guys to go into your house, go into your heart, go into your minds, and just sit in it. Feel your emotions, feel your anger, feel your sadness, feel your fear, and explore it and ask questions. Why do I feel that way? And if you have trouble doing that, reach out to one of our leaders, because we would love to walk with you and just talk with you through that. And you're not meant to do it alone. You have a whole family here that loves you very deeply. So that's what I have for you guys today, and I hope it was encouraging, and I will talk to you guys soon. See you later.